Welcome to the Black Girl Burnout podcast. Kelly here, and today we are going to do a Q&A episode, which low-key might be one of my favorite episodes we've ever done, just because I enjoy connecting with you all so much, and this is just an opportunity for you all to ask me any and everything, and I am here to listen and receive and give you some responses to the best of my ability. Very excited for this episode. You all asked some fantastic questions, and whatever I don't get to today, I will put in a part 2 because we're going to do this again. Probably in a month or so, do another Q&A. I'd like to do them quarterly just for me to connect with you all and to share some of my expertise, share some of the things I love and what I'm doing, and share a little bit more about me and help you. I am a burnout expert. I am a licensed therapist. And while I do not work with you all one-on-one, I want to give help. I do have an expertise. I'm not scared to be asked for advice and to give it to the best of my ability, knowing that I am not your therapist. I am just a therapist. So I'm excited. Also, in the way of announcements, on Friday, I'm going to drop a bonus episode. There's a real powerful conversation that's being had on Substack this week. Again, if you haven't signed up for Substack, you are missing out. It is free to sign up. And I think that conversation needs to be carried into the podcast. And really for the entire month of August, I'm going to be dropping you love notes every Friday. It's kind of a throwback to how we used to do things around here. If you're an OG listener, 15, 20-minute long episode for you on a topic. And I have several picked out. We're going to be talking about hustle culture versus hard work. There is a difference. While we may be all about hard work here at Black Girl Burnout, we absolutely are not for hustle culture. And I will talk about the difference between those two. We're also going to talk about what happens when you're healing and it triggers others, or when you feel tender after setting boundaries. We don't talk enough about that. And so I want to talk about that. We're also during the month going to talk about the difference between a supporter and a mentor, who can elevate you versus who can motivate you, and how to distinguish that in your professional life and in the realm of entrepreneurship, corporate, you name it. Those are just some of the episodes coming your way this August, but every Friday I'm going to drop what I'm calling a love note, and I'll say a love note on, and it'll be 15 minutes of hopefully inspiration and some concrete advice, tips, and tools on how to navigate these topics. Okay, let's dive into these questions. I put them aside on a spreadsheet and on my phone. So for those of you who are looking online, watching me on YouTube, you get to watch me fight for my life as I try to figure out how to work the questions in different places. But let's get started. Somebody on Instagram wrote to me and said, "How do I slow down?" That was it. That was a question, and it was powerful and meaningful. I smiled because I thought, oh yeah, I totally understand what you mean when you say that. And it really just depends on what do you mean by slow down. So I'm going to take this from a couple of angles. When I think about slowing down, do you mean professionally or do you mean socially and personally? Let's look at both. The beginning answer is the same, which is that how do you slow down thoughtfully and in small baby steps? So if you are used to running at 100 miles an hour, that's not going to change overnight, probably. I mean, it could, but most people, if you're like me, it took me years to cut down the cadence of my life, cut it in half. That did not happen in months. It happened over years. So what I would say to you is let's start professionally talking about slowing down, right? What does that look like in the realm of your work life, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work in corporate? What that simply means to me is it is taking one thing off your plate a day, right? Starting from there. There are a lot of meetings and a lot of urgency in today's working world that makes us feel like we have to do everything and be everywhere, both professionally and personally, but we're going to focus on professionally. And it's just this belief that we have to do all the things at all the time. And so one of the things I started doing when I transitioned from corporate to entrepreneurship, when I knew I was leaving behind my job, is I started thinking about what are all these meetings? What are all these do outs and checklists I have? Do I have to do all of these things, or is there a space in my life where I can delegate? What can I delegate to somebody else? What are the things I hate doing? What are the things that I don't feel particularly good at or insecure about? Who on my team, who of my colleagues, who of my staff, who can I bring in to help me kind of slow down? The other thing I did is I'm like, what's a meeting I don't have to go to? What is a thing that I am making up a story about in my mind that I have to be there? It's so important. And it's really just not. It's just not that serious. And I stopped going to some meetings. In fact, it became so popular in my job that I would have other people be like, I would say, like, I'm opting out of this meeting. I'm not going. Of course, I would say that to more like my friends. I wouldn't say it to like my boss. But it caught on. And everybody else, when we would be talking, my friends and colleagues would say, girl, I'm opting out of this meeting. And we felt so free to just say no. They weren't essential meetings. And guess what? Nobody asked where we were. It was all in my mind that I needed to be there. So it's really important to think about where can you slow down that way. Now, when we're talking about what you might be talking about, which is more like personally and socially, how you can kind of slow down, this one feels a little more difficult at times because we often have the myth of urgency and FOMO in our lives all the time outside of work. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'll do anything to cut down some of my to-do lists on my work. But socially, I feel the need to be everywhere and be all the things to all people. And particularly as the summer hits, we live in a culture where people really feel like if they don't say yes to things, that there'll never be another opportunity that comes again. And I know what that's like, particularly if you live a fast-paced life or if you have goals or you just want to see people. You're like, I'm not sure if I'll see them again. Life changes so quickly. Should I say yes to all the things? But here's the thing. If the goal socially and personally is to feel good about yourself and to connect with people, at what point you need to ask yourself, does this feel good? Because what ends up happening is you say yes to everything, you're exhausted, you're not fully present, you're thinking about the next commitment, or you're like me, wishing you were in your pajamas at home in my case, but you're not fully present there. And this belief that we have to perform our friendships, perform our love, perform our relationships, it's just that. It's an act. It's not real. And so what's more important? Less events, but more deeply nourishing ones. So maybe instead of doing 5 things on a Sunday, you're doing 2, but they're really meaningful. You don't feel like there's a cap on time. One of the things that I loved about living in Europe was this opportunity to just sit. In Europe, particularly in like places like Italy, when you book a table, it's yours for the entirety of the night. No one rushes you out the door. And I cannot tell you how deeply I felt connected to the people in my life during that time period. The joy to be able to look across the table at someone and just talk. Turn our phones over, no Instagram pictures needed. We didn't need to prove we had a good time. We just had a good time. And just chat about life, see how things are going, laugh, talk about our favorite TV shows. But we made eye contact and we connected deeply. And while that was just one thing I did, dinner, it lasted hours. And I felt more connected in Italy than I do now when I feel like people are rushing to the next event or rushing to the next thing or trying to find something more interesting. So a lot of it is mindset work about what do you really want? You can't have everything, but the key to being connected, feeling like you're growing, is in fact in the slowing. And maybe instead of saying the word, how do I slow down? Maybe it's more like, how do I deepen my relationships with others? How do I deepen my connection with myself? How do I progress and grow in my career? Sometimes we're scared or the word slow down is triggering for us. So think more about deepening, expanding, growing. Replace those words and see if that doesn't help you move the needle. Okay, that was the first question. There are many more, so I gotta, stop being so wordy, which we know for me as a professional yapper is hard. Okay, here's a great one from Paula, and she's in Connecticut. She identified herself. She asked, what are some of your personal morning affirmations? Oh, Paula, I love this question. I have many. My favorite one of all, I developed a couple years ago, and it was in response to FOMO. It was in response to a sense of urgency in my life. I turned 40 and I was just like, I got to get all these things done. If I don't get them done, what is going to happen? As if there's some imaginary clock. I now know that's nonsense. But at the time, what kept me going and what still keeps me grounded is this affirmation I tell myself, which is that there is more and more and still more. That is my favorite affirmation because it reminds me that what is for me will always be for me, but that there is an ocean of abundance in my life. That there isn't some imaginary or like artificial, if you don't go to this event, there won't be another event. If you don't go on this date, there won't be another person in your life who's interested. If you don't take this opportunity at work, there will never come a time again. That mindset left me making decisions that made me feel stressed and pressed and kind of miserable. But when I tapped into there's more and more and still more, when I affirmed that for myself, it changed things. It allowed me to remind myself that as the day starts, all opportunities are available to me. And that it gave me permission to say no and to slow down, connected to the other conversation, to slow down and to be at peace with the decisions. And the truth of the matter is when I said that affirmation, it became true. More and still more, even today, has come my way, even in the midst of difficulties and challenges. I still am finding abundance around every single corner. So try that affirmation for one. I'm trying to think of other ones that I often say I'm opting out of struggle and I'm opting into joy. I often use joy as my birthright. Abundance is my birthright. There's power in the pause. Those are a few of my other ones. There's power in the pause is so important for someone like me who's a recovering type A. I speak a mile a minute. I run a mile a minute. I'm like this little 5'1" gal who like runs as fast as she can. Like I'm just always on fast forward a lot in my life. And it has been my life's work to kind of bring me back to one time speed instead of 1.5 or 1.75 speed or chipmunk speed. And so the power of the pause, having the affirmation is there is power in the pause, has reminded me that slowing down makes me more thoughtful, makes me more present, makes me less tense and miserable. So that's one that I use as well. Joy is my birthright. Abundance is my birthright. Community is my birthright. Beauty is my birthright. These are other affirmations I use in the morning just to set the stage, to let me know that these are the things that I inherited. Struggle, not so much, but joy, 100%. Let me know if those affirmations help you at all, Paula, and thank you for asking your question. Okay. Ebony asked, hi, can you chat a bit about changing careers in your 30s in a podcast episode, this one right now? I am 31 and going back to school for my master's, switching from education to accounting. Go girl. Changing careers in your 30s, 100%. I changed my career in my 30s and I changed it again when I turned 40. Working backwards, when I turned 40, I said, this is the last job I'm ever going to have where I work for somebody else. So when I turned 40, I knew I was leaving corporate and government and I was going to work for myself. It had been a long since dream of mine and I knew I wanted to get into a specific type of consulting. But in my 30s, I changed careers again. In my 20s, I started out as a licensed clinical social worker, which I still am, but I worked specifically in the criminal justice arena. All of my 20s was spent studying and then working in a prison system and learning about behavioral interventions, working with what quote unquote was the worst behaved inmates in New York State. I didn't find that to be true, but that was a label they were given. And I loved the work. Unfortunately, burnout, the injustices in the criminal justice system and in prison systems in general really took a toll on me. So while I loved who I worked with, I didn't like the environment I worked in. And in my case, my career pivot was less planned and more so I just couldn't do it anymore. Then I changed and I worked with military trauma folks, people who had combat PTSD, people who are impacted by sexual violence. I've changed my career many, many times is my point. So I have been a direct practice therapist doing behavioral modification therapy and specializing in trauma. I have worked specifically in the trauma arena with combat PTSD veterans and people who also are impacted by sexual violence, either perpetrators in my career or more recently, people who've been victimized by sexual violence. I have also built programs from scratch. What I will say, doing all those things, I have been a director, I have been in the C-suite, I have done a lot. I've zigged and zagged in my careers. And the first thing I would tell you is always remember that you can zig and zag. In fact, most of the successful people I know, and more importantly, the happiest people I know, and they're happy because they love what they do and they get paid well for it, are zigzaggers. I'm going to put a shameless plug for last week's episode with Mackenzie Green. She talks a lot about it. She started out as an Olympian, like she was contending to be in the Olympics, became a beauty queen, and was Miss DC, and now works in marketing. So by all means, let yourself know there's no shame in pivoting. In fact, the majority of people who do pivot end up, I think, happier and living more abundant lives. But just like that episode talked about, and what I would say is never lose the thread that connects all of it. What I realized is I may not have needed to do a specific job title, but there were things about my jobs that I needed to have to feel connected and happy. And leaning into curiosity was one. I just wanted to always be learning and doing something different. Also, I saw the commonality of my thread is I always wanted to help people. Initially, it was helping Black and brown men who were incarcerated. I was deeply passionate about this. And now, in the present and in the more recent past, it's about helping women navigate their lives, navigate burnout, and before I'm an expert in sexual violence prevention, helping them navigate sexual harassment and sexual misconduct in the workplace and in their lives in general. The thread has always been to help people. So what I would say is if you're going back to school to learn something different, congratulations, you're still curious, you're still wanting to learn things. And to make sure you find what your thread is. Mine was helping people. Maybe yours is providing for your family. Whatever it is, keep it at the forefront. Maybe yours is I want a life that doesn't own me. Maybe education takes up too much time and too much personal space of you, like too much of your love, your compassion. And you're looking for something that enables you to live a life that lets you be all the things you are without feeling burnout. Whatever it is, find the thread and hold it and remind yourself of it. People are going to have opinions and thoughts. They don't know what they're talking about, but you do if you know what your thread is, and allow yourself to have permission to be curious about other things as long as the thread is there. So again, for me, the thread was helping others. For you, it could be something different. But take some time to think about what do all these jobs I've had in common? What does education have in common with accounting? What more so do I want to get out of this? Who do I want to be as an accountant versus who I was as an educator? These are good questions to ask to figure out what your thread is, and then hold tight onto that and give yourself permission to, at 41, maybe pivot again. As long as you're happy, as long as you're healthy, as long as you're living a relatively less stressful life, take the win. A win is a win, as they say. Okay? Thank you, Ebony, for your question. All right, let's go to some other ones. Let's be real. One of the biggest sources of burnout for Black women is money. Whether it's debt, divorce, home buying, investing, or just trying to make it to the next paycheck, financial stress is real and it's exhausting. But here's something that can help. The Savvy Ladies Helpline. It's free. Yes, really free. You get 55 minutes with a certified financial expert, no strings, no judgment, just real answers to your real money questions. Want to build wealth, prep for retirement, figure out how to invest or navigate money after a breakup? They've got you. Savvy Ladies is on a mission to make financial education accessible to all women, and the helpline is a game changer. So if money is stealing your peace, I invite you to take one powerful step toward financial freedom. Visit savvyladies.org and book your free session today. You don't have to struggle alone. You can opt out of burnout and into clarity, confidence, and peace with your money. So when we talk about constipation, bloating, heaviness, sluggishness, these aren't just random symptoms. They're actually your gut's way of telling you something's off. Look, I'm going to be real with you. As a podcaster and a consultant and a writer, I'm always on the go. And I have struggled for years to maintain my energy, to really keep myself kind of together with bloating around my cycle, all the things you can think of. This is where Oxy Powder from Global Healing came in. Oxy Powder isn't just another cleanse or a quick fix. It's a targeted oxygen-based formula that gently and safely breaks down and flushes out waste and toxins that build up in your gut over time. I take it at night, and by the morning, I'm feeling lighter and clearer, just better. Oxy Powder is easy to take, and because of that, it's become a staple in my routine. And I'm not the only one. A consumer study showed incredible results. 95% said that it relieved constipation, 87% said it felt relief from bloating, and a massive 95% said they would use it again, with 93% recommending it to a friend. If you're tired of feeling weighed down, trust me on this. Head over to globalhealing.com/heal and try Oxy Powder for 20% off. You'll thank me later. That's globalhealing.com/heal. What are 3 pieces of advice you would give 20s Kelly about how to navigate romantic relationships? Oh, girl, I love this. This is from Maggie, who's in Raleigh, North Carolina. 3 pieces of advice I would give 20-something-year-old Kelly about navigating romantic relationships. Here we go. 1, stop centering men. Girl, stop it. Get your degree like you've been doing. Free your mind to center yourself, center your hopes and dreams. And this goes to part 2, decenter men, part 1. But that doesn't mean don't have men in your life, but make sure the men center you. So I really do believe that women need to stop centering men so much, but men need to start centering women more often. And that goes for all men of all sexualities. And it also goes from all women of all sexualities and identities. Because I do believe we live in a patriarchal society, so we naturally default to centering men, even if it's not romantic. And I do believe that men, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, if they in any way identify as male, they need to stop centering themselves and start centering women. I think if we did more of that, we'd be happier. But narrowly focused on heterosexual romantic relationships, stop centering men, decenter men is what I would tell Kelly in my 20s. 2, only date men that center you. And what I mean by center you, I mean find men who are kind. A lot of times I spent so much time thinking about what a man thought of me, my body, my personality, if I was tall, if I was short, did I wear makeup? I spent a lot of times twisting myself into a pretzel to be desirable to men and very little time thinking about, well, what does a man bring to me? How does a man support my dreams? Does a man even ask me about my dreams? If they don't, kick them to the curb immediately. If a man cannot be tender or generous or kind, it's a red flag. And it can show up in small things. It can show up in being generous with agreeing to financially split things or paying for certain things. And I don't mean a transactional relationship. I just mean that when you go to dinner, it's not expected that you pay every time. And there certainly is an expectation if they pay that there's some sexual favor that needs to happen. Tender, kind, generous men who center you is important. And number 1, don't center men. Don't make men the focal point of your life, particularly in the 20s. It doesn't mean you can't get married or have meaningful relationships or have children even if you want to. It just means your attitude shouldn't default to whatever a man wants being your center. The 3rd piece of advice would be to say that it's okay if you don't find a man in your 20s, that you will have far better relationships potentially in your 30s and 40s than you ever did in your 20s. So if it's hard out there, y'all, good news. It should be better as you get older, especially because you get clear on what you want. And so you start attracting into your life. So stop centering men, find a man that centers you. And the third thing is understand that it gets better with time. Once you get clear on you, you attract better people of all kinds in your life, but romantic partners 100%. And you learn to like yourself so that if you're single for stretches of time, you're still having this very fulfilling and beautiful life. But overarching that, if you're dating men out here in 2025, make sure that they prioritize you. That doesn't mean they like you more, you don't like them. I just mean that they center you. They care about how you feel. They check in. Their actions align with how you treat your friends. That would be my bonus thing to think about. If you can call your friend and check and see how they're doing, if you can remember it's their, I don't know, birthday, or they just graduated from college, or they got engaged, and you can do some big event or party for them, or send them a text or bring them a card, buy them flowers, then a man can do that for you. And if your partner romantically isn't doing any of those things, it's a red flag. That's what I would tell 20s Kelly. Thanks, Maggie, for your question. All right, let's move on. Okay, this is a really powerful question from someone, I think they're just going to be anonymous. They're from Vancouver though, and they asked, how can I forgive myself for things that I've done in the past and resolved? For example, relationships, bad decisions, and financial problems. I always find myself worried about messing up again. I think what I would say is, first of all, what a beautiful, brave question. And I don't think you're alone in that. I would say, how do you forgive yourself? You remind yourself that you're doing that. If you are worried about messing up again, what does that tell you? It tells you that you care. It tells you that you're aware and you're not doing the things that you did before out of a space of ignorance. Like, you're not blindly going back into those situations. And give yourself permission to have peace about it. I think oftentimes we, particularly as women, we beat ourselves up so much that we ruin opportunities to find joy. And part of not messing up again, quote unquote, part of not falling back into bad patterns is actually prioritizing joy, is giving yourself permission to feel good. Because the more you feel good, the less likely you're going to do things that make you feel bad. So give yourself permission to have more joy and more space in your life. Trust yourself. If you are concerned about it, that means that it matters to you and you are going to do your best not to fall into traps again. The second thing I would add to that is, if you need assistance with that, consider therapy. There may be specific patterns that you're doing that you can recognize. Okay, when I get stressed, I overspend. So I'm going to work with a therapist to develop a plan that when I know my stress level is at a 6 or above on a 10-point scale, I need to do this. I need to call a friend and go do something free. I need to jump in the bathtub. I need to get back to my sleep routine. There are little proactive things you can do to protect yourself from falling into bad patterns again. If you get triggered, quote unquote, I don't love to use that word, but it's words people can understand. If you get triggered by a certain behavior, if a man doesn't call you back or a partner doesn't call you back in 24 hours, you're like, this is when I start to get anxious about them leaving me and I might do something that I regret. Start to build a pattern where you, one, recognize what's the thing that happens before you do the behavior you don't love, or before you, quote unquote, you're calling it mess up again. And then do something that mitigates it or counteracts it. So it's like, if I get really anxious, if I don't get a good night text from my partner, either one, tell your partner, this is a thing that is hard for me. I need good night texts. Two, if it happens, say, what can I do for myself that will help take my anxiety away? Maybe it's a deep breath and an affirmation, some box breathing, 4 breaths in, hold for 4, 4 breaths out. Whatever you can do that in the beginning, when you're just starting the pattern, you can interrupt it. That's what I would say. And give yourself permission to feel joy. Joy counteracts guilt, and it stops you from behaving in a way that makes you feel less than. And the more we feel worse about ourselves, the more likely we are to engage in destructive and not so great behaviors. So thank you from that question. All right, let's keep going here. This is from Jade. Oh, this is a great question. Jade in Detroit. She wrote, I have 3 very close family members that have health issues and there is no cure. Some days I think I'm going to lose it. I feel like I'm mourning their loss already because there's nothing I can do. Is it possible to grieve for someone while they're still alive? Yes, it is. And I'm so sorry that's happening to you right now. As someone who has navigated this with parents who have both, one has passed away since, my father, but both of my parents had chronically degenerative illnesses. And I watched my father be very sick for almost a year. And while I didn't expect him to pass when he passed, it wasn't a surprise because he had been suffering and had been sick a while. He gotten better for a little bit, but then he got sick again and he passed pretty quickly. And yeah, I grieved my father the entire year before he passed because I saw what it was doing to him. I saw him lose the ability that he had. My dad was like a superhero to me. You know, he was someone who could do all the things, get all the things, lift all the things. In January of 2024, before he got really sick, my car broke down. I'm a 43-year-old woman at this point, and my daddy got out there and he fixed my car for me. So to see him go from that to someone who is struggling to take care of himself at the very end, it was hard. And so the answer is yes, it is possible to grieve for someone while they're alive. It's totally normal and very healthy. And what I would say is the thing about sickness and watching people have illnesses that are incurable, it gives you an opportunity, and it is so difficult. There are people who lose people they love in a blink of an eye, and they never get to say the things they want to say. They never get to do the things they want to do with them. What I would say the only benefit, and there's not a lot, okay? There's no benefits to having someone get sicker and sicker and have health issues with no cure. But one thing you may get the benefit of versus losing someone overnight is you get to say the things you want to say to them. You get to change your attitude about things that used to annoy you don't anymore. I had a painful but really good year with my dad. I said I loved you to him every single day. I said it anyways, but it was just our practice. But I said it extra. I gave him hugs a lot because I was home so often. I got to hug him a bunch more than I ever would have if he had just died overnight and I hadn't seen him in months. I got to ask him questions about his childhood I never got to ask before. I got to know him in a different way. I got to be tender with him in a different way. And there are things I still wish I would have said to my dad, but there's not a huge amount of regrets. I got the benefit of not having a regret. So if you have people who are chronically ill in your life or have illnesses that are degenerative and you watch them getting sicker, make it a call to action to tell them that you love them, to resolve any tension or past pain you may have. I let go of that. There was nothing but repair and love between my dad and I, and that made me feel good. And make sure to take time for yourself, that you get to grieve to the side. Like you get to grieve when you leave them. Maybe you go see them, you have a hard visit. Make space to cry, make space to be sad, talk to someone, talk to a grief counselor. Anticipatory grief is real. When you know people are sick, you kind of anticipate it. Don't let it take over the entire relationship. Let it instead nurture the relationship. Let it make you say, I love you more. Let it make you more generous and tender with them because you can see that they're not well and you can make peace in some ways while they're alive. You don't want to be trying to make peace after someone passes. It happens all the time and it's fine if that happens. But if you are in a position to make peace now while they're there, take it. That's what would be my advice to you. Take it, take it, take it. Thank you for that question, Jade. All right, there's still more here, but I'm going to hit a few of these and try not to yap so much. Okay. Okay, here's an easier one that's more light after that. And then we have a couple more, um, some harder ones here. So Maya had asked, I owe Maya a voice note, y'all. Maya's wonderful. Maya's another therapist who listens to the podcast and has been sliding in my DMs for a while now. She's an inspiration and really puts a smile on my face when she sends me messages. She asked for a summer skin routine for oily skin, and I love skincare. This is a total pivot from what I just said before. We're changing topics a little bit. One thing about me is I may not look the part, but I promise y'all, first of all, 43, my skin looks great, but I love skincare. I love, love, love skincare. I love perfumes. I love all the things. I'm not like a person who's going to go full glam. I'm not that person. I'm not the person you're going to ask about lighting. No, I don't know any of that. I don't know how to pose on Instagram. But what I can tell you is I am always the friend that people go to for skincare recs, even makeup recs. Though I don't wear a ton of it, I am the person people go to for all things. What's the best of in your life? Skincare, clothing, perfumes, whatever. Why? Because I'm a nerd. I'm a professional nerd. I literally read journal articles about skincare. So I know what products work. I know why they work. I recommend certain things because they're phenomenal. So if you ever have questions about that, y'all, I love to talk about that. I might be starting a Substack just for me where I'm calling myself the cozy connoisseur, where I curate all the stuff. I mean, like furniture, clothing, that is just the best of. Because one thing about me is I'm going to find out and read up about it and cross-reference it. It brings me joy. So to summer skin routine for oily skin, a couple of things. One, I will say I'm going to talk about Western and then Korean. Western brands that I think would be great for you is Prequel. I think that they have tapped into some really lightweight products. They're run by a dermatologist. It was created by a dermatologist. Dr. Sam, it'll come to me what her last name is, Ellis, Sam Ellis. Fantastic brand and very, very reasonable. So you're going to want to use their lightweight moisturizers. Their cleansers is the best cleanser I've ever seen in my life, and it's for all skin types. And their creams are a lot lighter. The other brand I'd recommend to you is called Dew. They have an Instant Angel. They have a thicker cream, but they have an Instant Angel gel that I think is fantastic. It's much more lightweight for oily skin in the summer, and you're going to want to check that out. The Korean side of the house, Medicube is incredible. Their clinicals back up their work. And I would start for you, if you have oily skin, I would use their Zero Pore pads. They're kind of toner pads. They're brown top. They also have a red top. If you're prone to acne, get the red top ones. If you're not prone to acne, get the blue tops. But you're going to put them, for me, I put them in the oily parts of my face, which is like a little bit of my T-zone. They shrink pores. They get rid of all the gunk. You're much more likely to break out or have clogged pores. And then put the rest of your skincare on top of it. Go for gels versus creams. Always use sunscreen. Try Prequel. Try Dew, the Instant Angel gel. Don't get the cream. It's probably going to be too heavy for oily skin. And Medicube pore pads. Blue top if you don't have acne-prone skin. Red top or pink top if you do. That would be my recommendation. All right, last question, because we'll get the other ones on a part 2. I promise you, I haven't forgotten. There's some good ones here. I'm trying my best to answer these as quickly as possible now, and you know I'm yapping. How do you know when you're healed? This is Paula's question. Do you feel as if one can get to a place of 100% healing recovery? Paula, fantastic question. I don't know that you can be 100% ever healed on something, but I do think of it like all things that are a wound, right? If you get a cut that you had as a kid, some cuts and wounds still hurt. There's surgeries that I've had years and years ago that still hurt today. And there's other things, like I had a really significant trauma happen to me with a finger when I was younger, and it was very gnarly, and it got put back together quite fine. I don't feel anything from that. But the remnants of what happened is still there. It just doesn't have any impact on my life and I don't feel it. So there might be a little scar on my finger, but otherwise I don't even know it's there. And so I would say while you cannot be 100% healed maybe or recovered, what you can feel, and I would even say there's a difference between healing and recovery. I would say that it can get to a place where it doesn't even come up in your life ever again, the incident or the struggle or the pain. It just depends on what it is. And then you might lose someone you love, and they'll always be a piece of you that has a little twinge of loss when you think about them. But I think the more optimistic answer here is the answer to the question, how do you know when you're healed? And I would say for me, when I'm talking about burnout, and I've said this before on a podcast with Resma Menakem on his podcast, I talked about daydreaming as a sign of healing. When you've gone through something really emotional, something that's been very painful, the antidote for that pain is when you dream again. And I don't mean like having that dreams, it could be that, but I mean more so like when I allowed myself to dream about my professional career again, I felt so much better. That was an indication to me that I was healed. When you have a bad breakup and you start dreaming about romantic partnerships, or even if you are just have bad feelings associated with partnership, dreaming about dating again, dreaming about what your partner could be like is a sign you're healing. If you have had difficult times with childbirth or you've lost a child and you find yourself daydreaming about having a child again, that to me is always a sign of healing. And it doesn't mean you have to be 100% perfectly healed to daydream or to dream again. It just means that you are actively healing and you're far more recovered than you could imagine, and that you are kind of in the last steps of healing. So if you find yourself daydreaming and opening yourself up to possibilities, that is the most beautiful indicator to me of healing. And I always like to think about that. That's why I push so much for people to daydream, because it's so healing and healthy to do so, to open your mind up to possibility and all the positive ones. Okay, that is it for this round of Q&As. Next round, I'm going to talk about family boundaries, and there's been a couple other questions too. Maybe my summer read list. I'll drop these as a bonus episode for sure. There's so many more questions and I want them to keep coming. Please keep sending me your questions. I loved this. I hope you loved it too. I hope these were helpful answers. I know I'm long-winded and a yapper, but I love this. Tap into me, ask me questions. I want to answer them, and stay tuned for Friday when I drop my first love note. Thank you all for being here, for listening to this podcast. I cannot tell you how meaningful this is for me, how healing this podcast is for me, and it means the world to me. So thank you for listening. Thank you for submitting questions. I will make sure I answer all of them in some capacity, whether it's on Instagram or another episode. I'm going to do it. If you have any more questions, send them to me, DM them to me. More will be coming. We're probably going to find out a way to do like a hotline so you all can directly speak. You don't have to listen to my voice drone on and on and on. All right. So here are a few ways to support the podcast. You can like, review, subscribe. All of your reviews mean the world to me, and you can share them with your family members. I really want this podcast to grow and to reach everybody who's on a journey to opting out of burnout. If that's you and the people you know, let them know. Also, follow me across all the social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Substack. It's all the same. It's at Black Girl Burnout. And particularly Substack has a little corner of my life. More to come about what I'm talking about there on Friday. But the truth is it's a different experience on each platform. I do that intentionally, which is a lot of work, but I do it on purpose because I want this information to hit you in many different ways at many different times. And I don't know, I think it's a great way to continue to connect. DM me on Instagram or TikTok. I respond to DMs. I literally send voice notes to listeners. I'm all in. DM me or send me a message on Substack, which is my new obsession, where if you were a blog girly or you like Tumblr or you just like to read and kind of do like a digital magazine experience of Black Girl Burnout, Substack's for you. And we are having some fantastic conversations over there as I continue to expand that platform as we are exploding on it. It's free to join. Join the Substack, y'all. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to leave the Q&A doc up and open because I want to keep having these conversations. And I'm going to work on figuring out voice notes and ways for you to call in like hotline style, because I think that could be really fun too. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Rest well. And enjoy your summer of yes.